So.
Even with Skullface dead, our pain is still right with us. We need more strength. We need more men. Diamond Dogs needs to be bigger. Missions have come in too. We still have a long road ahead of us.
Okay. So viele Kassetten, was? Ich spiele gerade der mit dem Boss, hat Interessantes erzählt. Okay. Ich hole erstmal.
Please select a landing zone.
Roger. This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Mission. Sun will set shortly.
This is B-Quad. On station at LZ.
Okay.
Mission
Boss,
list updated.
you can now give the order to develop or dispose of nuclear weapons from your iDroid. With a nuclear deterrent, even if you're discovered while infiltrating a rival PF's FOB, most PFs won't dare retaliate. But you, of all people, know how dangerous it can be to have nuclear weapons. So will you add nukes to our arsenal as a deterrent? Or will you take them away from other PFs and dispose of them to help build a world that's free of nuclear weapons? I'll leave that decision up to you.
Das mal The End schon das erste Mal, wenn man sieht, wo er im Rollstuhl sitzt, dass man schon da töten kann. Ja, das habe ich auch erfahren. Dass man den da irgendwie anscheinend schon töten kann und dann später der Bosskampf nicht mehr kommt.
We've inoculated the staff with Walbachia to keep them from becoming symptomatic.
That should also contain the infection.
How did this happen in the first place? It has to have been a Cypher spy within our ranks.
If this is so, then why the Kakango strain? If their intent was to wipe you out.
Skullface said the remaining English parasite was close to the boss. If this latest strain was his doing,
he wouldn't have tipped his hand.
It is possible someone brought eggs onto the base without knowing. Stuck to their shoes, clothing.
Well, that makes the most sense to me.
And where did the eggs come from?
You mentioned that your boss visited Nzoya Badiopulu.
Sure, but his gear's disinfected immediately upon return.
Then he was not the carrier.
And not just the boss. All staff dispatched to high-risk regions were quarantined on the flight back. When the symptoms first appeared, we checked and disinfected all equipment used up to that point. Any and all prisoners, soldiers, materials, and animals extracted during missions were also quarantined.
So, that just leaves.
I have seen children around here. Where are they from?
All over. Some were being held hostage at a mine. Then there were the troublemakers at Wala Yamasa.
Wala Yamasa.
Yeah.
Their clothes, their things. Did you burn them?
They're just kids. We couldn't. And besides, not one of them's shown symptoms.
The parasites don't infect prepubescent hosts. Their vocal cords are not fully developed.
Well, if infection doesn't occur in children,
it is possible they carried eggs on their clothes, and the infection spread from them.
Check the kid's stuff.
I doubt there is any trace left by now.
But if there is, some of those kids must be close to hitting puberty. How could we have missed this?
the name Wala Yamasa got quite a reaction from you. I'm guessing the Kikongo strain was released in that village.
Cypher used that region to experiment with vocal cord parasite transmission. The Kikongo strain.
Commencing platform.
The
Commencing
settlements
platform.
around the
Commencing
refinery upstream of Wala Yamasa
Commencing
were the
platform
proving grounds.
construction.
They would infect one villager, then record transmission speed. Dangerous work. If they failed to contain the infection, it would slip into the surrounding regions.
At which point the world found out about the parasites, making them useless as a weapon. Incredible they'd risk such a thing.
The test site was densely populated too. A terrible place for such experiments. No doubt, they thought burning everything would wipe away all traces.
International dem
The
Spiel.
settlements were
Anscheinend.
covered in oil anyway. Who would wonder if one day they caught fire? And so it did. They burned it all. Living and dead.
Those remains.
But they miscalculated. Transmission speed was far faster than anticipated. It may have been the temperature, or hygiene standards, or perhaps the parasites reacted quickly to Kikongo. Whatever the reason, nearly all villages were swiftly infected, and the settlements reduced to mounds of corpses. Making matters worse, the dry season was ending. When it came time to burn the village, the Moneni River had swelled. Many of the bodies were waterlogged.
Meaning they didn't burn completely.
The corpses still contained viable eggs, and the larvae washed downstream. And when the people downstream drank that water,
That marked the end for Wala Yamasa.
I learned all of this at the mansion. I warned him of the risk of eggs getting out.
And?
We are prepared for any eventuality.
I get it. Putting the oil field back online. The oil leaks saner. They plan to pollute the river. Prevent the spread of infection.
But the oil flow was stopped. And downstream, the people of Masa village started using the water again. The PF soldiers deployed at the village were locals, spoke Kikongo. They were infected, and the kids survived.
I've heard enough.
And who stopped the flow of oil?
Don't.
We did.
That confirms it. The source of the Kikongo strain infection was Masa village. And the children brought it here. It is no one's fault. There is no blame to be cast.
The parasites, they were tested in other regions?
Their physiology requires that they be tested under varied conditions. Another test site was in Afghanistan.
So it was the parasites there.
Both the Pashto and Tajik languages are spoken in the mountains of Afghanistan, and population density is low. Ideal testing grounds for how accurately the parasites target only the specified language. It is also relatively easy to prevent the spread of infection.
And the results?
The first test, I am told, was a success. Once the Pashtun Mujahideen were infected with the Pashto strain, they were all but wiped out.
The Hamid fighters at Smasei Fort.
It was doubly successful. No Tajik Mujahideen or Soviet soldiers became symptomatic.
So the parasites proved to be effective. What about the second test?
Also supposedly a success. A Pashtun village
Whoa,
was the
what?
target. However, the original aim was to obtain samples of the infected. In this, they failed.
And the village?
The Soviets enacted a standard scorched earth operation.
That must have been the village where Malak lived, before being held captive at La Marjate Palace.
Having had more time to think on it, the details shared with me may have been false. They are madmen who would do anything to cover up the truth.
They certainly seem to like tossing their problems in the fire.
As a boy, Skullface's life went up in flames. Perhaps that is what fuels his fixation with fire.
Your Wolbachia stopped the infection all right, but I still don't get it. How can a few bacteria change males to females? I know they're only bugs, but...
It is not such a rare thing in the natural world. Many insects and nematodes are infected with Wolbachia.
But why?
They nest in the cell cytoplasm of the host, even in the egg cells, with the result that the offspring are born infected.
Mother-to-child transmission.
However, Wolbachia cannot nest in sperm because they do not have cytoplasm. So even a successful infection of a male ends after a single generation. This means the Wolbachia must resort to maximizing the population of infected females.
Sounds like an ethnic cleansing campaign on a tiny scale.
Gender change from male to female is their survival tactic.
So more females means more Wolbachia carriers, so it can keep thriving in the following generations.
But the parasites in a human host are supposed to be a mating pair. If there's no male, there'll be no offspring at all. It's killing itself.
Slow down. This tactic is intended for environments where a single male can copulate with multiple females. Originally, the Wolbachia did not infect the vocal cord parasites. I created a mutated strain, modifying the Wolbachia so that it could infect monogamous pairs. The Wolbachia's greatest multiplying tactic, the male-to-female change, worked against itself in the monogamous parasites. Just as you said. Then, I performed repeated selection of Wolbachia strains until I achieved 100% certainty of male-to-female conversion.
Creating female-female pairs, unable to reproduce.
And you say the Wolbachia affects the host of the host, that is, us, cutting off our means to reproduce?
It is almost certain. Of course, we will not turn female. After all, mammals possess no natural gender-changing function. But some Wolbachia strains can cause cytoplasmic incompatibility in the host.
Is that some cell deformity?
Put simply, it means the altered sperm of infected males kill the female's egg on contact.
And that's happened to us?
Yes. And yet, what occurs in humans is not just simple CI. To date, there are no cases of Wolbachia affecting humans. The fact that this strain causes this effect, is it the vocal cord parasite's affinity with humans? I do not know enough to say for sure.
So the parasite warps the host. Reminds me of what Skullface said.
It is the way of all organisms to create their own optimal environment. Just look at you and this base. Organisms that cannot do this are doomed to extinction. The difference with parasites is that their environment is another organism. That creates a connection between life and life. Parasitism, symbiosis, or death. In this way, the host too is challenged to adapt.
Select unit. Staff dismissed.
About this OKB-0 Emmerich was talking about. Its location and features match the citadel in the mountains northeast of the Soviet base camp. Built during the time of Alexander the Great, it was left in ruins following one of Genghis Khan's campaigns. Its occupants changed time and again due to war, and it was expanded on more than one occasion. Ultimately, it fell into the hands of the Soviet philosophers. The Soviet army was using it as the headquarters of its Afghan invasion force. But it would seem that Skullface's connection with the philosophers gave him license to develop Sahelanthropus there. And that's what Emmerich was doing at the place, before he got the axe. But OKB is a designation the Soviets use for weapon design bureaus. There's no way they'd have one of those in Afghanistan. And in principle, the numbers that follow OKB are always integers above 1. There is no 0. Perhaps this was a secret facility of the Soviet and Chinese philosophers dating back prior to World War II. Though it's more likely Skullface just picked a fake name that more or less fit the Soviets' pattern. He doesn't go there often, but he sure as hell won't miss this. They use the heliport on top of the tower for his visits. Start by heading for the heliport, then wait for your chance to make contact with Skullface.
It seems Sahelanthropus's armor is made from depleted uranium. That offers some serious protection. The U.S. military is planning on using it for its main battle tanks, too. Maybe that's where Emmerich got the technology.
Uranium? They're using nuclear fuel for armor now?
No. What they use for nuclear fuel is uranium-235, which is extracted from natural uranium. Depleted uranium is a byproduct of that process. Sort of like the leftovers, I guess. The garbage. Uranium-235 makes up 0.72% of natural uranium, whereas depleted uranium contains only 0.2%.
What are the benefits of using it for armor?
It's a pretty short list. Uranium's a heavy metal, like lead, meaning it can hold a greater amount of kinetic energy. But it also boasts a hardness closer to tungsten. That makes it an ideal material to use for, say, armor-piercing ammunition penetrators. But it's not the best choice for armor. Its volume is less than that of ceramics, but for an equal weight, you could end up with less protection.
So why use it then?
According to Emmerich, it came down to him being unable to source ceramics technology from a manufacturer. Plus, given that it's an upright walking vehicle, he wanted to reduce the bulk of certain areas. Despite all that, depleted uranium still makes for some tough armor, and Emmerich says it's been proven in live fire tests. It stops most Soviet tank shells.
Clouds approaching.
Emmerich didn't go with depleted uranium for Sahelanthropus' armor because of its strength.
He had nukes in mind.
Exactly. It's meant to use its body as the fuel component for a nuclear weapon. Sahelanthropus uses built-in uranium enrichment archaea to melt its own body and extract uranium-235 from the depleted uranium in its armor. Those archaea perform the enrichment in an extremely short time. The concentration jumps by a factor of several hundred, from 0.2% to over 90%. The end result being highly enriched weapons-grade uranium. Sahelanthropus' body itself becomes a nuclear bomb. Emmerich says if it were to self-destruct, the nuclear yield would be somewhere in the region of 15 kilotons. Since you need about 50 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to trigger a nuclear reaction, that would mean Sahelanthropus contains something like 23 tons of depleted uranium.
That's not very much.
No, it isn't. That's about what you'd expect to find in a main battle tank's armor. The point is, it can be transported anywhere, even use its conventional weaponry on the battlefield, and the international community will never suspect a thing.
Select unit. Staff dismissed. Select unit. Staff dismissed.
I just received word from the R&D team and the transport team out of Afghanistan. They finished installing Sahelanthropus on the base. It's ours now.
All right. Don't let any of the staff touch that thing. Especially Emmerich.
Of course. That guy's crush on Sahelanthropus is beyond a joke. Guess he really wants to see his tech stand on its own two legs this time.
That's not gonna happen.
I know it. So you've got no plans to make it operational again?
Damn right.
Boss, I want to hear it straight from you.
Hear what?
What the hell do you want with that thing? The drive is busted. It's not like it has a nuke on board. Even if the metallic archaea could turn it into a nuclear weapon, all it can do is self-destruct. Sahelanthropus just isn't a weapon anymore. It'll draw unwanted attention without even being a deterrent.
I know.
The weapon's development strut sank 2 feet under that thing's wake. That's 1 year's drop in a single night. We've started on reinforcing the strut, but there's no guarantee it'll hold up if a storm hits.
I know that too.
Boss, why keep it?
It's a mark. Us Diamond Dogs, we don't have a country to call home. That means we have no past, nothing to prove that we lived. Every one of us threw it all away when we came here. Sahelanthropus is a symbol to show that the likes of us brought at least one crisis to its end.
A mark in history. So we can't just fade away.
It's of no practical use to us. But we still need it.
A symbol of what we've done. I'm glad I sounded you out on this. Snake, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you.
I don't need gratitude. I need security. Keep Emmerich away from that thing.
Roger that.
Why activate Sahelanthropus in Afghanistan? This is how Skullface wanted things to play out. The Soviet Union secretly develops a new type of nuclear weapon and successfully deploys it in Afghanistan. Revealing the existence of Sahelanthropus results in a return to the glory days of the Cold War. The threat it poses reignites the nuclear arms race between the world's major powers. The demand for nuclear weapons increases around the globe. What if you then introduced a nuclear weapon anyone could get their hands on? Non-nuclear nations, militant groups of all shapes and sizes, they'd all jump at the chance. Sahelanthropus was a marketing tool to sell nukes all around the world. But I think it's safe to say that plan was stamped out before it got up and running. The world's intelligence agencies never did turn up anything conclusive on it. After all, Sahelanthropus vanished before word could spread. Everything that's happened is already a fading memory, never to join the pages of history. Except for Cypher. Cypher won't forget. They'll already be working on something, quietly, beneath the surface. They'll use the pieces of data scraped together from this incident to build their own bipedal weapon. It'll take them a long time to complete it, but for now, the greed sector have found their new life's work. We'll have to be ready too.
Mission accepted. Heading to Afghanistan.
Ja, okay, machen wir mal ein bisschen Mission Zeug. Ich frage mich ja, wann ich endlich mal Schalldämpfer verbessern kann.
Deploying.
Okay.
Find and extract the missing CIA agent. The target was laying low with the friendly Mujahideen during the vocal cord parasites incident. The man headed back to OKB-0 after the Soviets recaptured it. Check the target's VI on your iDroid.
Sandsturm, ey. Ernsthaft?
Analysis complete. You have arrived at your destination.
You gotta extract him.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
КП-7. Объект обнаружен. Координаты 03-850-12750. Пришлите транспорт.
Enemy presence.
We know where to find the target.
The map
Check
has
your
been
iDroid.
updated.
Отправляем группу. Оставайтесь там до ее прибытия. Конец связи.
The map has been
That looks like the
updated.
target.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
Great. Hurry up and extract the target.
Yep.
Please
Target
select
extracted. Exfiltrate the hot zone boss.
has been updated. Support helicopter requested. Extraction failed.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss. Boss, the target filled us in on what's been going on. He betrayed the Soviets, passing information to Langley, but got scared after learning XOF used the vocal cord parasites. Then came feelings of guilt that his leaks sent comrades to their deaths, and fear that America might deploy such a weapon itself. But in reality, XOF and Langley don't have a collaborative relationship, and Skullface was not working for America. Still, I can't blame the man for being afraid. After laying low with the Mujahideen, he tried to cut his ties with the US and return to the Soviet military. But along the way, someone came after him, and he was forced back into hiding. Could have been remnants of XOF looking to silence him. And you know the rest. He doesn't seem to know much about the parasites, but nevertheless, it'd be too dangerous to hand him over to Langley or the Soviets. We'll keep him here as originally planned.
Good. You captured it alive.
Boss, come on back to base.
Oh, okay. Yeah, story.
Something.
Development project has been added. Please select a mission. Unit dispatched.
We're having Code Talker continue his parasite research. He's clearly very grateful to you. I'm sure he'll return the favor somehow.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Gaining altitude.
yellow cake that Cypher was having the PFs transport. Before we met you, the boss recovered it from a truck crossing the savannah. Are there metallic archaea inside it?
Yes, the archaea metabolize uranium-235 to subsist. They must be stored inside yellow cake, or they cannot survive.
So those biological traces we took for impurities were actually the real cargo.
Of course, they are deactivated, so they do not trigger a sudden enrichment. They are like baker's yeast. Yet, they do gradually enrich the uranium as they feed. I imagine you detected weapons-grade traces.
Yeah, we did.
And the malachite that was loaded on the truck had traces of uranium in it too. So that's the flower, huh? Skullface was gonna sell do-it-yourself nuke kits. The uranium-enriching archaea complete with a user's manual. And the ores with the uranium could be sourced by the client or provided by Cypher.
Even the trace amounts buried in common ores can be enriched to weapons-grade uranium by the metallic archaea. Proving that must have been the most important factor of the trials. That and the ability to successfully prevent detonation.
So if the amounts of uranium in the ores are low enough, they can get past any inspection. And you only need a tiny amount of the archaea to act as the yeast. No great challenge to smuggle that either. The first step towards saturating the world with nukes.
His plan. That was not my intention. My only goal in developing the metallic archaea was to save the Nette.
What made...
The one that covers. The parasite that lives on the surface of the skull's bodies is what gives them their power. Similar to my children, who live in my skin. I modified the parasites I isolated from the body of that old man, differentiating them with various abilities. One that can blend perfectly into its surroundings by exposing the pigments in its cells at will. Another that, by harboring multiple species of metallic archaea, can oxidize and reduce metal. Isolating the one that covers and transplanting it into an artificial medium should provide the same abilities as the skulls, but they can only subsist within a human body. Once transplanted into the medium, they will eventually die. Another thing, the weakness of the one that covers is desiccation. Their surface moisture loss is greater than ours. The reason they give off mist is to alleviate this by releasing the salts inside them as microparticles. Water vapor condenses around them, appearing as mist. But this dries out the atmosphere until they cannot even produce mist. And once their supply of water from the host runs out, the parasites are in danger. They, along with their host, enter a form of suspended animation. However, a similar effect occurs if they come into contact with a large amount of water. Rain, for instance. The one that covers will temporarily abandon other processes in his eagerness to absorb the water. Pitijolone. Make the weather your ally.
What made you think a tool for creating undetectable nuclear weapons would save your people?
After 70 years, the Nette reclaimed the Navajo nation from which we were banished. We bore all the hardships of poverty, but we were proud to live off the land we called our own. But in the moment the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, everything changed.
I don't get it.
The nuclear arms race between the US and the Soviet Union began with the end of the Second World War. Suddenly, there was a massive demand for uranium, and it was our ill fortune that the ground beneath the Navajo Nation was rich with uranium ore. The Black Ana government set up mine after mine, and many of the Nette worked them, never informed of any danger. Every day, they went to work with no protection. The slag was simply piled out in the open. When rain fell, uranium traces left behind would seep out, and when the ground dried, it was blown about as dust. Land and water were contaminated, irradiated. Many of us became sick and died. That pain lives on to this day.
I had no idea.
Wanting more than anything to revive the land my forebears left to me, I was delighted upon discovering microbes that eat uranium. If they could be domesticated, I believed we could rid our land of uranium.
Were you successful?
No. The research called for funding on a colossal scale. But nobody was willing to invest with no prospect of a return.
And that's when Skullface showed up.
Correct. I can save you and your people. We share the same will. That is what he said to me. And I believed him. Plagana forced me to abandon my uranium cleanup work and focus on nuclear weapons. And he held all the Nette hostage. Today, the uranium mines within the reservation are finally closing down. It is simply less expensive now to source uranium overseas.
New victims, different places.
But uranium is a tactical resource. To rely on a foreign country for it is a difficult decision to make. And he was in the perfect place to influence that decision.
He could have condemned your people to the mines forever.
The contamination comes not only from uranium. The fallout from the Nevada nuclear tests also settled on our lands. As if our fortune were not already bad enough, we are also downwinders. To save the Nette, I must complete my original research.
Okay.
Please select a mission. Mission accepted. Heading to Afghanistan. Deploying.
Boss, your objective is to eliminate as many enemy combat vehicles as you can. For this mission, we're backup for the guerrillas' offensive. That means our mission isn't over until theirs is. Keep an eye on the remaining time. Also bear in mind that you'll fail the mission if you don't take out a single vehicle. As for payment, the more vehicles, the bigger our paycheck. So give them a real fireworks show. Check the target's locations on your map. Once you've spotted incoming reinforcements, their location will be added to your iDroid too.
Be careful down there, boss.
The map has been updated. Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
set their predicted route to your iDroid. Check your map.
Updated. Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
Great. Now on to the next. Boss, we have information on new targets. Check your iDroid for their predicted route.
The map has been updated.
South Africa was previously suspected of developing nuclear weapons. It already had a conspicuous presence at the UN because of apartheid and its armed expansionism. But when neighboring Angola and Mozambique became socialist countries in '74, South Africa felt hounded into a corner. So it accelerated its nuclear program to protect itself. 3 years later, the Soviets discovered a test facility, and 2 years after that, an American satellite observed a flash in the southern Indian Ocean. It said this was South Africa conducting a nuclear test with the help of a certain ally. Skullface used the situation in South Africa to get this ally to lend a hand. They both wanted nukes, so it was a mutually beneficial relationship. On the surface, anyway.
I figure South Africa started getting serious about nuclear weapons production in '75. In '74, the government was still able to get by with bluffing that it had a nuclear arsenal. But the year after, word spread that an independent armed group in the Caribbean was crushed by Cypher for possessing a WMD. That's right, boss. What happened to you and your men was the reason South Africa decided to push ahead with nuclear development. A force independent of any country getting its hands on a nuke. That was a threat to the existence of countries everywhere. It wasn't just South Africa.
Target elimination confirmed. Got any more in you?
The world was scared of you. You were a threat to more than just the Cold War.
Boss, we spotted a four-wheel drive transporting a prisoner. It's not part of the mission. Do you think you can bust him loose? Just if you have the time to spare.
Detected. The map has been updated.
Всем боевым группам, это кафе. На нас напали. Всем подразделениям занять боевые позиции. Зона 1, это кафе. Открыть подавляющий минометный огонь по противнику. Прием. Это зона 1. Вас понял. Подготовка к минометному огню. Конец связи.
Emmerich uses externally powered legs of his own design. It's bionics technology, a product of the U.S. military's failed attempt to develop a powered exoskeleton. All the wearer has to do is apply a little force, and the actuators continue the movement in that direction. But his legs are unique. Instead of using a hydraulic mechanism, the actuators run off metallic archaea. That increases the actuator's reaction speed and also enables him to lock and release the joints at will. The legs are a nifty little gadget, but they have two clear weaknesses. First, they're dependent on external power, maybe because he built them knowing he couldn't leave his lab. There's no internal battery. That's why they won't work if they aren't plugged in. Second, and this is more than just a weakness, The legs are directly connected to his bones. Could be to minimize signal loss and the orders output to the legs and the drive response from them. Either way, Emmerich has used bolts to attach load-bearing parts directly to his...
You've got other targets closing in. You can check their predicted route on your iDroid.
But the end result is those legs and his body are fused together. And that appears to be how he's able to move them so precisely. But that also means that any shock to the legs would be delivered right to his bones by way of those bolts. The same is true if he encounters the corrosive metallic archaea. If the corrosive archaea ate into the exposed bolts, they'd reach the endoskeleton parts and eat...
Boss, I have a report from the intel team. The targets are now on the move. I've sent their predicted route to your iDroid. Check your map.
The reinforcing parts, even the tiniest bit of force or weight would snap his bones.
Okay, subject is...
Metallic archaea in front of him.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Would it be worth living if he lost those legs of his? I'd bet that is what the doctor fears the most. I just helped him imagine. I'd bet lots of if the same is true if he encounters the corrosive metallic archaea. If the corrosive archaea ate into the exposed bolts, they'd reach the endoskeleton parts and eat through them too in the blink of an eye. The doctor's bones are full of holes to accommodate all the bolts. They're like sponges. If he were to lose the reinforcing parts, even the tiniest bit of force or weight would snap his bones. So when I dangled those corrosive metallic archaea in front of him, he realized straight away what would happen. Life wouldn't be worth living if he lost those legs of his. I'd bet that is what the doctor fears the most. I just helped him imagine.
Was?
Snake, are you okay? Snake!
In this mission, we're back up for the guerrillas' offensive operation. Take out the incoming Soviet combat vehicles. Each one you eliminate will contribute to our reward. However, you'll fail the mission if you don't take out any at all. Boss, each vehicle is a piggy bank just waiting to be smashed. Get as many as you can. On new targets. Check your iDroid for their predicted route.
The map has been updated.
South Africa was previously suspected of developing nuclear weapons. It already had a conspicuous presence at the UN because of apartheid and its armed expansionism. But when neighboring Angola and Mozambique became socialist countries in '74, South Africa felt hounded into a corner. So it accelerated its nuclear program to protect itself. 3 years later, the Soviets discovered a test facility, and 2 years after that, an American satellite observed a flash in the southern Indian Ocean.
It said this was South Africa conducting a nuclear test with the help of a certain ally. Skullface used the situation in South Africa to get this ally to lend a hand. They both wanted nukes, so it was a mutually beneficial relationship. On the surface, anyway.
I figure South Africa started getting serious about nuclear weapons production in '75. In '74, the government was still able to get by with bluffing that it had a nuclear arsenal. But the year after, word spread that an independent armed group in the Caribbean was crushed by Cypher for possessing a WMD. That's right, boss. What happened to you and your men was the reason South Africa decided to push ahead with nuclear development. A force independent of any country getting its hands on a nuke. That was a threat to the existence of countries everywhere. It wasn't just South Africa. Your presence pushed a lot of countries to get nukes. The world was scared of you. You were a threat to more than just the Cold War. If nations are gears in a machine, you had the power to smash them loose and watch the whole world grind to a halt.
Outpost captured.
Emmerich uses externally powered legs of his own design. It's bionics technology, a product of the U.S. military's failed attempt to develop a powered exoskeleton. All the wearer has to do is apply a little force, and the actuators continue the movement in that direction. But his legs are unique. Instead of using a hydraulic mechanism, the actuators run off metallic archaea. That increases the actuator's reaction speed and also enables him to lock and release the joints at will. The legs are a nifty little gadget, but they have two clear weaknesses. First, they're dependent on external power, maybe because he built them knowing he couldn't leave his lab. There's no internal battery. That's why they won't work if they aren't plugged in. Second, and this is more than just a weakness, the legs are directly connected to his bones. Could be to minimize signal loss and the orders output to the legs and the drive response from them. Either way, Emmerich has used bolts to attach load-bearing parts directly to his femurs, probably by mimicking surgical treatment for compound fractures and the like. But the end result is those legs and his body are fused together, and that appears to be how he's able to move them so precisely. But that also means that any shock to the legs would be delivered right to his bones by way of those bolts. The same is true if he encounters the corrosive metallic archaea. If the corrosive archaea ate into the exposed bolts, they'd reach the endoskeleton parts and eat through them too in the blink of an eye. The doctor's bones are full of holes to accommodate all the bolts. They're like sponges. If he were to lose the reinforcing parts, even the tiniest bit of force or weight would snap his bones. So when I dangled those corrosive metallic archaea in front of him, he realized straight away what would happen. Life wouldn't be worth living if he lost those legs of his. I'd bet that is what the doctor fears the most. I just helped him imagine what it would be like. Thanks to that, I got the information we needed without either of us getting hurt. You know how he is. He's probably already over the shock. The better you know your adversary, the easier it is for you to get information from them. And vice versa.
You said that the nuke skull...
The target has left the mission area. It's too late to eliminate that one. Just focus on taking out the remaining targets.
His will.
Quite so.
Boss, we spotted a four-wheel drive transporting a prisoner. It's not part of the mission. Do you think you can bust him loose? Just if you have the time to spare.
The map has been updated.
You said that the nuke Skullface was trying to spread around the world were equipped with a failsafe. Something that could shut them down at will. His will.
Quite so. After all,
Dispatch.
he needed a guarantee that a buyer wouldn't simply turn the weapons back on him.
So how can they be stopped?
The criticality trigger, that is, the detonator, is a complete black box design. Any attempt to dismantle it causes it to melt in seconds, using the corroding archaea. The design ensures that no detonation is possible unless he disengages the lock.
So he had a way to disengage it remotely.
Precisely.
Plant
The client simply presses a button. At that moment, the detonator begins transmission with a surveillance satellite. The satellite reports to him how the client is trying to use the nuke. If he does not object, the lock is disengaged.
But if it's a risk to him in any way,
The detonator melts down. The same is true if detonation does not occur within a preset time after the lock is disengaged.
A target has left the mission area. There's no way to eliminate it now. Head for the remaining targets. You've got other targets closing in. You can check their predicted route on your iDroid.
trying to spread around the world, we're equipped with a failsafe.
Updated.
Something is will.
Quite so.
Hey,
The detonator melts down. The same is true if detonation does not occur within a preset time after the lock is disengaged. The nuke is rendered useless.
Who the hell would buy something with strings attached like that?
The client would never know until the moment they actually try to use it. Most likely, he would have explained the time delay as the detonators needing time to activate. And he only intended to sell to technologically primitive groups in the first place.
Approaching.
let me guess. He'd claim it was defective and offer a replacement. Shadier than a used car salesman.
Skullface shakes your hand like a friend, using the other to control you like a puppet. This is how he works.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
The guerrillas' offensive will be ending soon. Boss, there's still time left. Take out as many vehicles as you can. Boss, I have a report from the intel team. Targets are now on the move. I've sent their predicted route to your iDroid. Check your map.
Extraction failed.
Code Talker. Haven't seen you eat a single thing since you got here. Let me guess. Photosynthesis?
Oh? What makes you say that?
Well, a long time ago, I knew someone with a similar ability.
Well, you are correct. Most of my body is covered in parasites. I supply them with water, and in return, I receive sugars they produce when exposed to light.
Target elimination confirmed.
My
Got any more in you?
The parasites also act as my eyes. They have replaced
Boss, need a little extra firepower?
organs
We've spotted a Soviet weapons transport truck.
that are
Apparently its cargo is something pretty powerful. What do you think? Should we make them share? Tread carefully, boss.
Updated.
Through your research,
I would like to say as much, but there is more to it than that. Let me take you back 20 years. I had hit a dead end with my parasite research. Then I was approached by a foundation. They said they had a sample of an unusual strain of
Das Gepiepste geht mir so auf den Sack.
parasite.
which foundation?
Apparently, they had links to ARPA.
3 minutes remaining.
All I learned, I was somewhat ignorant of the ways of the world. Just being
A target has left the mission area. It's too late to eliminate that one.
Before.
Just focus on taking out the remaining targets.
I visited them to the
Boss, we have new targets. Check your iDroid for the details.
The map
Well,
has been
to be
updated.
precise, his partial remains. A collection of parts, you could say. The man had died in an explosion.
An old man, you say?
His flesh had not decomposed. In fact, the tissue's cells were still metabolizing. The parasite had infected, or should I say assimilated with, the tissues, and was keeping them alive. I became obsessed with studying the body parts, foregoing food and even sleep. Every day was filled
Only 2 minutes remaining.
with discoveries. The parasite's biology, internal anatomy, life cycle. But there was only so much I could learn through observation. And so I made a decision. To truly know the parasites, I had to live with them.
So, you implanted them inside you from the dead man's flesh?
Correct. It was quite a gamble, whether or not they would adapt to me. But fortunately, it appears I was compatible with them. Or perhaps, through my many years of research, my immune system learned to tolerate them.
Were they that body's only parasite?
Yes. However, there was a separate specimen that supplied its host with adrenaline in response to pain.
1 minute remaining. What's wrong with you? Move!
Yet another that could control insects at will through secreting heterogeneous pheromones. I wanted exposure to them, to take them into me. But my wishes were denied. Their records, though, provided clues that helped advance my research. Would you care to join me? A life spent never worrying about food is a most wonderful one.
I think I'll pass. But thanks. This has been helpful.
Boss, time's up. The guerrillas' offensive was a success. The day is theirs, and our mission is complete. Time to fall back. Leave the hot zone as soon as you can.
Wen? Die haben Turbinen angegriffen. Okay. Möglich. Weiß ich gar nicht mehr.
Please support helicopter
Roger.
requested. arrived at Mother Base.
Mission complete. That was rough. Thanks for getting us through it.
Good. You captured it alive.
Emmerich's finished development on that battle gear of his. Get back to Mother Base.
Oh, ne. Ja, gucken wir uns das noch an und hören uns dann danach noch den Anfang von der Hamburger-Geschichte von Miller an. Und ja.
Clouds approaching.
The battle gear is an armored weapon developed to take on hostile bipedal weapon systems. But unlike the Soviet-funded Walker gear, the battle gear still hasn't been properly field tested. I'd like to assign a combat unit to take it on dispatch missions, so that we can evaluate its capabilities and reliability. Assuming you've got no objections, give the order to dispatch the unit from your iDroid. Boss, we need evidence to prove our suspicions about Emmerich. Head to the central base camp in Afghanistan and recover that AI pod. It's time we purge Diamond Dogs of that traitorous parasite once and for all.
Uh-oh.
Please select a landing zone confirmed.
Roger.
Oh.
Boss, welcome home. This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. Have arrived at LZ. Will stand by.
Support helicopter has arrived.
denn jetzt? Geh mal. Eieiei.
Boss, we need evidence to prove our suspicions about Emmerich.
The mission.
Head to the central base camp in Afghanistan and recover that AI pod. It's time we purge Diamond Dogs of that traitorous parasite once and for all.
Ja, das wird interessant. Nächstes Mal dann.
I have spoken enough.
Ganz wichtig.
Your men can take it
Die
from
Dinge da
here.
hier.
Will you permit me to rest? Have something to eat?
I thought you don't eat.
I can subsist without food. But there is more to the act of eating than nourishment. We receive nature's blessings and reaffirm our part in it. And in doing so, we express our gratitude.
Development complete.
Sorry, it's hearing you say you don't need to eat and that you're part of nature in the same breath.
Development complete.
Anyway, what can we get you? Not exactly a five-star restaurant, but the kitchen's used to serving a lot of different appetites.
Hamburgers.
Hamburgers?
Even we Dinne have become Americanized. I eat them often back home.
And you just can't let them go. Well, as far as symbols of the American Empire go, hamburgers are pretty good. The victory of capitalism. Your people suffered so much at the hands of America. And you asked for hamburgers.
We have suffered more than you can know. But I do not see hamburgers as an accomplice. A single dish, providing a balanced helping of nature's blessings. Meat, grain, and vegetable. How could anyone hate such a magnificent thing?
Says the guy who can survive on photosynthesis. Balance has nothing to do with it. You just like a good burger.
That is also true. Be warned, though. I have very high standards.
Don't worry. I do too. All right then. One good old-fashioned all-American icon coming up.
I look forward to it.
Okay. So. Keine Ahnung. Er schafft es anscheinend zu überleben.